Hey guys, today has been one of the craziest days in my chess careers. Today, during the FIDE World Rapid and Blitz Teams Championship, we have played against Hans Niemann and his team. And by we, I mean my team, which is called Tennis Kazakhstan. I'm still in my team uniform, by the way. You can see this is the Kazakhstani flag. This is the logo of the team. So we played against Hans's team and it was very close, and my game was the decisive one, the last one. The game between me and the last board of Hans's team decided the match. So here I will show you a couple of games from this match. My team, as I already described in the previous video, check it out, is mainly composed of young Kazakhstani talents. We have just one grandmaster. All other guys and girls are either international masters or FIDE masters, but they are very strong. They are very underrated, as many Kazakhstani chess players are. So let's see how we fared. And Hans's team is among the favorites according to ratings. Let me just give you a brief information on who's in his team. So just for you to understand, Hans Niemann, 2700 plus rated, number 27 in the world currently in classical. Then Amin Tabatabey from Iran, also top 30 in the world, 2700 plus rated. Daniel Darda, grandmaster, champion of Belgium, and I think he's one of the strongest. I think he used to be the world junior champion, if I'm not mistaken. Then Nurgul Salimova from Bulgaria. She played in the female candidates tournament, women's candidates tournament. So one of the strongest ladies in the world of chess. She was playing because there has to be at least one female player in the team. And also Grandmaster Andrew Hone, aka Speed of Light on chess.com. His chess.com's rating is over 3100. Crazy. And also Hans teased in one of his interviews, I think, that they have a crazily good last board. The last board, I'm playing on the last board in our team, and the last board of Hans's team is a guy who's rated over 2700 on chess.com, which is crazy because the requirements to the last board are that you should have a player who is rated not more than 2000 over the board in all formats, classical, rapid, and blitz. So this guy, he's rated around, let me check. He's rated in rapid, he's rated, his name is Miro Agiat, and he's rated 1845 in rapid. As you may see, I'm rated 1924 in rapid. So we are both eligible for playing on the last board. And yeah, he was a strong guy, but you will see how we clashed. And yes, my chess.com's blitz rating is around 2300, not 2700, but you will see that I surprised him. Let's say this, but no spoilers. Let's start the game between our leader, young talent from Kazakhstan, Aristan Isanjulov. He's rated 2431 in rapid. Hans is rated in rapid 2614. Well, he's a little bit underrated in rapid, I think, because he doesn't play a lot of OTB rapid tournaments. So let's see what Aristan did. So he played the Canal Sicilian system with bishop d5, b5, check. a4 is a sophisticated move, but this is all theory. So here both sides develop. Hans, by the way, was playing almost instantly all the moves, and Aristan got in some time trouble quite fast. But this is all theory. You might have noticed that black did not take here because bishop b7 is actually the main move, pressuring the e4 pawn. This is a standard position. Around here, both sides left the realms of theory. Here Aristan started thinking about queen d2. Queen d2 is not the only move. Knight d2 was also good, but there is nothing wrong with queen d2. So he put the queen on f4, and e5 is a bit committal because it leaves the hole on d5, but there is no hole actually because Black will play d5 themselves. So once the queens are traded, d5, Hans strikes in the center. But you might have noticed that the evil bar doesn't like this. Why is it so? Because now there are holes on d5 and c4, and also a4 and a5 potentially in black's position. Whenever you advance your pawns, you weaken some squares. You take some space, you control some important squares, but you also, pawns don't go backwards. So these are now the holes in black's position, which Aristan really craftily uses. So he maneuvers the knights, he strikes this pawn chain with f4, and he puts, you see this maneuver? Do you like this maneuver? You see what he did? He put the bishop back to put the pawn forward, and then he put the knight where the bishop used to stand to reposition the pieces. This is really great positional game. Actually, Aristan played this game at like 95+% accuracy. Very impressive by him. So he puts some pressure on the e5 square, e5 pawn. Hans defends. Hans is on the defensive now. Rook f2 is like slow maneuver and reshuffling of pieces. Hans puts now 2 rooks on the e file. He wants to strike with f5 and open up that file to put pressure on the e2 bishop. So this bishop leaves, prophylaxis. The rook maneuvers. Now this is again prophylaxis to protect this pawn in case this knight leaves. Now black has to do something, so black takes, but now white has some space in the center, which is kind of useful. The position is around equal. f5, black strikes. Black wants white to open this file, of course, to infiltrate, but white just pushes e5 because white wants to blunt this bishop. Knight d5. Now again, pawns don't go backwards. This pawn used to control d5. Now it no longer does, so the knight jumps via d5, but this knight jumps via c4, and this square is great for the knight because there is no b pawn and no d pawn to take this square. So Hans decides to sack a pawn because this pawn now is not protected, and Aristan just takes it, and Aristan is suddenly up a pawn. The position is still balanced. Black has some counterplay. Black attacks the f4 pawn. White defends it with the rook, and yes, many of the white pieces are on the first rank, but still, a pawn is a pawn. And white has some good prospects here. Knight d1 jumps in attacking the rook, and it's apparently a mistake. This knight was stranded here because bishop g2, apparently, probably Hans was expecting the rook to move somewhere, for example, here, and then there is some tactics like knight takes e5. If you take, you lose the bishop. So he was probably expecting this. The rook is attacked, it should move, right? No, it shouldn't. Bishop g2 is a great move that Aristan found with not that much time on the clock. This will be a fork. The knight is hanging. What to do? He protects the knight. Now rook e2. Now the rook leaves. Now this is not possible because I don't have to take with a pawn. I can take with a rook, but also this is not possible because the rook will be hanging. This is a pin. Very, very annoying pin. And actually, white is winning. Suddenly, Hans is losing. Board 1, he takes the pawn, but rook a6, putting more pressure on this knight. And if you decide to add some defense to this knight, if you decide to go rook c7, then this knight, the second knight, is no longer protected and white just takes it. This rook is overloaded. It has to defend this knight from the bishop, but also it has to help this knight because it's attacked 2 times and it's pinned. So black is tied down, absolutely paralyzed. Hans tries to go for some tactics, some chaos on the board, d3, but Aristan just took on c6, and he is now threatening rook takes c8 check and winning another rook. So here Hans Niemann resigned the game. And board 1 of Hans's team lost, because if Hans takes here, Aristan would just take here, the rook is hanging, and if the rook moves, for example, here, well, you can win in many ways here, but you can just take here, for example. The knight is hanging and it's stuck here. The only square is knight a4, but this is very passive. White is up a piece and a pawn, so there's no use playing on. So Aristan defeated Hans, but most of Hans's teammates defeated my teammates. And my game, being the last one, decided the match, because the score was 3-2 in favor of Team Hans. So if I win this game, it's a draw in the match, 3-3. If I lose, we lose. If I draw, we lose. So let's see what I did in the game. I'm playing with the black pieces. I know that I have to play for the win, because I know that the team's coach told me that I have to play for a win, because on upper boards there are top GMs playing for Team Hans. Our guys are very good, but they are not as experienced as and not as high rated as Hans's team. So I have to risk. I have to play for a win, and I did. And I played a gambit. So let's see. d4, knight f6. Actually, Aristan, I wanted to say that he's a really great player. I didn't see him in action before. And boy, was I impressed. He was pressing against Dubov. We also played Dubov's team, Daniil Dubov. And it's actually the team that is leading the world teams currently. It's on the first place after 8 rounds. So Daniil Dubov, Parham Maksudlu, Vladislav Artemiev, all top grandmasters. Katerina Lagno, one of the best female players. So yeah, they are very, very strong. We played them. We lost, unfortunately, to Dubov's team, but Aristan was pressing and had a winning position against Dubov. Dubov managed to make a draw. So yeah, Kazakhstani juniors, man, they are very strong. Okay, I'm playing with the black pieces against Miro Agiat, or Miro Agiat. He's from Syria. 1845 over the board, rated, and 2700 on chess.com. And I decided to play of course, the opening about which I've made some videos on this channel. Check them out, the King's Indian Defense. But here, he played some sideline. Usually white plays e4, knight f3, all this kind of setup, but he played a slow setup with e3. It is also possible, it's not bad. d6, bishop e2, and I strike with c5, more in the style of the Benoni defense. The King's Indian setup with e5 is also possible, but not as good in this bishop g5 setup. So c5 is what I prefer here, d5, and here I go b5. This is a gambit. He can take this pawn in 2 different ways. This is something in the spirit of the Benko gambit, named after the famous Paul Benko, who lived in I think in the middle of the 20th century. So the idea is that he can't really take with the knight. Actually, I improvised this over the board. I've never seen this position before. But I decided that he can't take with the knight, and the computer agrees, because then I have knight e4. First of all, I attack the bishop, and second of all, I threaten this with a check. And for example, if he goes bishop f4, I can go queen a5 check. I can, of course, also I can take on b2, but queen a5 would be even better. So if he drops back, I just take and take here, and I'm completely winning. So I can even, for example, take here. This probably is even better, according to the computer, because I have this. Oh, yes. This is funny. If he goes here, I can actually take almost everything with discovered attacks. Yeah, he's hopelessly lost. Check, check, and takes here. Yeah, I'm winning. So that would be great, really. So because of this, he cannot take with the knight. Knight e4 is very strong, so he has to take with the pawn. And this really gives me great compensation for the sacrificed pawn. I go a6 here. This is a standard idea for Benko. For the Benko gambit, once white takes on a6, black usually either recaptures with the bishop or the knight, or goes queen a5, putting more pressure. And yes, I've sacked a pawn, but I have very good pressure down these files, also down this diagonal, also down this diagonal. Also the knight can jump in via b4 to sometimes d3 or c5. So there are lots of complications that usually favor black here. So here I decide, once I go a6, first of all, he did not recapture, he did not capture on a6. He decided to go knight f3, but it doesn't really matter. I captured on b5, he took, and I went queen a5. Now again, I'm threatening knight e4 because this is a pin, and this will be unpleasant. So he castles out of the way, and I go h6, which is the best move according to the computer. So the idea is to go g5 here. Actually, the engine says that it's the best move and says that I'm already better. The idea is to go knight e4 here. Yes, this knight can be taken, but then this knight will no longer protect this bishop, and I evaluated this position as much better for me. Yes, I'm still down a pawn, but I have the two bishops advantage. This bishop is an uncontested dark squared bishop, which is like the best thing you can have in the King's Indian. This bishop, well, it is contested by this one, but I don't even consider this to be a real bishop. It's not doing anything. It doesn't have any squares. It doesn't have a single square. All the squares that it could potentially go to are taken by my pieces. So yeah, it's not a real bishop. And this is the uncontested light squared bishop, which will also be very important, instrumental in my attack and in my control over the board, over the whole board. So this is why taking for him is not good, because he doesn't want to give up this bishop of his. He retreats, but now I just recapture a pawn and I'm better. I'm better because I have a great dark squared bishop, much better than his, as I already said. Also, I have pressure down the A file, and also I can advance my pawns over there. I have many plans, I'm active, and I'm really pressing. I felt this. At this point, queen c2 tries to defend the pawn from the rook, but I go bishop a6. If he takes here, I will recapture with the knight, and then I'll jump in via b4, attacking everything, and it will be not a pleasant thing for him. So, of course, he doesn't help me develop and doesn't take. Instead, he goes e4, but then I go with my knight to d7. Potentially, I want to go either to b6 or to e5. Here, I was calculating for him. I thought he should go for this, e5, this pawn break, to create some counterplay of his own. Actually, the computer agrees. And here, if I take, for example, with the knight, which is kind of sensible, he can take here, and he cannot take because this bishop is hanging. So probably he will have to take here first, and once I capture, he will be able to take here. But then I will take here, and I'm up a pawn already, but he has some counterplay. So that's what he could have gone for. So this e5 sacrifice, but he didn't do that. He went rook e1, preparing e5, and now he wants to do this really desperately. But here I calculated takes, rook a2, and now if he goes e5, I thought that I can take either with a pawn or with a knight, and he cannot take on e5 because my rook and my queen both are eyeing f2, so I will take with check, and queen g2 will be checkmate. So that's what I calculated. This is why he cannot take on e5 with a bishop, which was the idea of rook e1. So I was happy after having calculated this, and he did not go for e5. He entertained a long thing, and he went queen b5. And actually, black is practically winning at this point. May I remind you that if I win this game, we draw the match, which would be a good result, of course. I'm really tired after this day. It was crazy. So here I decide to go forward, to go all in. I need the win. The team needs the win. And already by this point, I think most of the game finished, and I saw that most of my teammates were losing or lost, so I should risk it. So I rushed it a little bit. So the best move here was just to defend the knight from the queen by going rook d8. And I'm much better. And later I can push h5, h4 and do all the things I wanted to do. But I decided, you know what, I'll sack a pawn, because now I'm up a pawn. I took the one on a2, so I can sack. And I went knight e5. I calculated something here. He takes, I take with a pawn, he takes my pawn, and I go g4. And I'm threatening h5, h4. Actually, at first, I wanted to go h5 immediately. And I was calculating rook c6, which is the best move. Attacking my queen. The queen does not have any squares to go to. But here, if he takes, he opens up the f file for me. So this is kind of good. I put pressure on f2, and that would be dangerous. Actually, I also have h4 here. Yeah, if he takes here with check, I take, and his bishop is will be lost because this is impossible. This will be a checkmate if he takes on e2. Again, same motif. So he'll have to give up this bishop. Yeah, so I also thought about f takes c6. Actually, I think I would have seen h4, of course. But here, I decided against this. I decided against going h5 here. Instead, I went g4. Because I saw this. Queen c4. Instead of taking, which would favor me. Queen c4 is annoying. He's attacking the rook, and he's putting pressure on e6. And if the rook, for example, moves, I don't know, like let's say rook b2, then he can already, I think, take. Can he? I thought he can. Well, the computer says that it's not fatal for me, it's a draw. Somehow I still win his bishop, but he has queen c1 attacking the rook. Rook b4 takes, queen g5. Yes, he has a decent amount of pawns for the bishop. I did not see that. But I saw the idea. I saw queen c4 and I didn't like it here. So this is why I did not go for this variation. Instead of h5, I spent some time thinking and I went g4 with the same idea of pushing the pawn to h4. He goes queen c4 again with the same idea, taking my rook. I go rook d2. I decide to stay on the second rank to put pressure and also to put pressure over there. He attacks my rook again and I put it on d4, which is a nice outpost for the rook. Putting pressure here, and also this is a protected square. Rook c6, and I go e6. The same idea here. Now he doesn't have the queen c4 idea, so I was happy that he is not putting pressure on my e6 pawn. He took, surprisingly, and I took back. And now this is a dream position for me. I'm putting pressure on the f file. I want to go h5, h4. I'm very optimistic about my position. I'm attacking, and I need the win for my team. He goes queen c5. Trying to activate the pieces. I go h5. Now h4 will win the bishop. What can he do? Rook c8. He's desperately trying to do something. Here I calculated h4, rook takes, and if the queen takes, he will take the pawn because the queen protects the pawn. And if the bishop takes, then he will take this pawn. This is what I calculated. And unfortunately, this is not a good position for me. If we exchange everything, he's up a pawn. So I'm not checkmating him. This is not good. So h4 does not work, unfortunately, but something else does. I can just take his rook. And once he takes, I already started getting a little bit low on time. This is rapid, 15 minutes per game. And I immediately went king h7. And right after making this move, I realized I could have won the bishop very easily. Rook d8, blocking the check, attacking the queen. He has to move, for example, queen c4, and then h4. And the bishop is lost. What's surprising is that during the game, I thought, wow, this is a sure win for me. I'm so stupid. How did I miss this? But I tried to calm down because the game was still going on. I was sure that I still can win, even though I missed something. But turns out this is not a win. This is a draw, according to the computer, because he could have taken and checked me. And I need to go king h8 or king h7, doesn't matter. And he has queen g6, and the computer says this is full equality. He has 2 pawns for the bishop, but my bishop is not that impressive. My king is very weak. And here he just goes g3. This is the top engine line. And we have to exchange, and this is a theoretically drawn endgame, because he will exchange the pawns on g4 and e5 for his pawns. This is an easy task, and then rook and bishop versus rook is a theoretical draw. Although it's not as easy, not as trivial. I would have played on, of course, because I still would have needed the win. And also, I have a video on this channel about rook and bishop versus rook. Check it out. It's not as easy to draw with a rook, although it is a theoretical draw. But this did not happen. I completely forgot about the fact that I don't have to move my king out of check. I went king h7. Instead of this, I could have gone rook d8. And yeah, that's a missed opportunity, but still, the game is not over, far from over. He goes queen e8, attacking this pawn. I go king h6, which serves two purposes. First, it defends this pawn, and second of all, even if I move the pawn, for example, he has queen h5, check, and a fork, so I have to protect this square. So I go king h6. And it is equal, but we are both playing on increment by this time. So it is a 3-result game. He goes f3, because otherwise I'm threatening h4, winning his bishop again with the same idea. f3. Here I was calculating for some time rook d2. This is the move that I wanted to make, but I thought rook d2, I don't really understand why I should do it. Actually, the computer says it's a mistake, so apparently, yeah, I was thinking the wrong idea. Then I was thinking g takes. And I thought, well, nothing special. He can go rook f1, for example. And yeah, the computer says it is equal. But actually, bishop f2 is even stronger. Because the computer, I will not argue with the computer. And then I was like, okay, I don't have time. I'll just push h4. And h4 is a blunder. You know why? He didn't see this. He could have taken this pawn, saking the bishop. Because if I take the bishop, queen h5 is a checkmate. Because my king is so clumsily positioned on h6. This is crazy. He didn't see this. So he could have sacked the bishop and got a winning position. Instead, he went bishop f2. And from afar, I was thinking about going rook d2. But then I realized, you are stupid, Greg. Bishop e3 is a fork. You will win this rook and the game. You will lose this rook and the game. I was like so unhappy with myself. How could I not see this? So unfortunately, I don't have the time to even to move the rook. If I move the rook, for example, to g3, he still can check me, and I have to go here, and then he can check me from here, and he's losing. I'm losing all my pawns and the game. So I don't have the luxury of time to retreat. So I decided, you know what, I'll sack this rook. Sack the rook! I took the pawn. He takes, first he checks me, and then he checks me again. He has all the time in the world to take the rook. I block, and now and only now, he takes. Does he take? And takes here. Surprisingly here, if I exchange the queens, the computer, after having something, says that h3 gives me a draw. For example, there is a crazy line like this, king f1. Let me just show it to you. He makes me take his pawn, but he takes my pawn, and this is like a fortress. He cannot break through. This is a draw. So the computer, I let it run for some time. The computer does not find the win, so that would have been a draw. But of course, a draw is not good enough for me at this point. So after queen takes f3, yes, I'm down in exchange, but I have to play on. I went queen g7. He retreated because of some checks, sensible decision. e5, again, anything can happen here because we are playing on increment, on seconds. He tries to activate the rook. I go queen d7, rook d2. He tries to prevent me from going d3. I go bishop f4, and here I blunder a fork. He takes my pawn. I push d3. I try to do what I can. I want to push the pawn to d2. He goes queen here, and here I stop to think for some time, because if d2, I thought he can go g3 or something like that, and actually g3 is not that good. Queen g4 attacking the rook is very powerful here. Well, I didn't think that at the time. Well, but it is winning, of course, because he has this h and g pawns, and he has to break through somehow. He has to dislodge my bishop and check me with his queen. But unfortunately, in this position, I went queen d6, and my flag fell. I lost on time. This was tragic. My team lost. I got so unhappy with myself after this, because I was winning against a 2700 rated chess.com player, and I could have saved my team, but I wasn't good enough, unfortunately. But the tournament continues. We are not among the group of leaders, but we are trailing them behind by several points. There will be 4 more rounds tomorrow of Rapid. Let's see how it goes. Wish me luck. And the day after tomorrow, there will be a Blitz tournament, also World Blitz teams. We will play in that one as well. Also, I've recorded lots of podcasts with Nepo, with Jan Gustafsson, with Arjun Denigaisi, with Alexander Grishuk, many other top players. Stay tuned and see you in the next one.